NetsBoy here, bringing you all the latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. Thank you again for coming back. Obviously, I interested you enough in my opening video to make you kind of hear what the hell I have to say. So I'm just going to dive right in and get right to it. It is currently late July here in the world, and the Nets have done a lot of things so far in the offseason. So I'm just going to break down what the Nets have done so far this offseason, my personal opinion of everything. First thing the Nets did was they hired Jason Kidd as their head coach. I don't know really what to say about this. I'm happy in a nostalgic way because Jason Kidd is back with the Nets. You know, he helped build this franchise, make it what it was. That being said, I really don't know what more to say about him. Haven't seen him coach yet, so we don't really know how good he is, what he's going to do. That's only to be seen. So I can't really give you a true analysis or opinion of Jason Kidd other than the fact that he's the coach. So is he my first choice? No. I think I would have taken Brian Shaw and a lot of other people before him, but hey, maybe he'll shock us. So I'm happy, though, for Jason Kidd. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So then that brings me now to draft night. The Nets drafted Mason Plumlee, the center from Duke. Really solid big. He's about 6'11", 6'10", 7 footish. It's hard to tell because when players get drafted, they grow like 5 inches. And I don't know why. It's just statistics. These players, they when they get drafted and join the NBA, they grow. NBA height, whatever. What can you do? But, he's really a true center who can play the power forward. So he's going to definitely be a significant player in the rotation for the Nets. He's going to provide energy. He's an energy guy. He's kind of like a Chris Humphries before Chris Humphries became all emo and Kim Kardashian and things like that. He's not going to light it up offensively. He's going to be good on the boards. He's going to be a decent defender, and he'll probably provide a couple minutes here to help Brook Lopez out, and be in the front line. And, he's not going to be a huge player, but he could be a really solid player for the Nets. So happy for him. But let's be honest. The drafting of Mason Plumlee was pushed to the back burner because of the big news. The news that is considered some of the biggest news in Nets history. The blockbuster deal that brought Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry to Brooklyn. Yeah, woo! Excitement. Yes. Tons of Nets fans are super pumped about this, and I'm pretty pumped about it too. Not gonna lie. I think it's a really good move by the Nets. They're in win now mode. And there wasn't much more they could do to improve the roster other than to bring in, championship caliber players. I think it was a genius move by Billy King. I understand there's some risks involved. Obviously, they're all aging, and you definitely don't have a lot left, but they definitely have enough. I feel that they can help the team win. And, obviously, this isn't a bigger picture thing. I mean, after 2 seasons, what is this team going to look like? I don't know. But basically, the Nets have given themselves a 2-year window to try to win a championship, and if they don't win in 2 years, who knows what's going to happen. But we'll not worry about that when they get there. But me personally, I think it's a really good deal. They lose Gerald Wallace, Chris Humphries, Marshawn Brooks, Keith Bogans, Chris Joseph, and some picks. Decent players, but when you're getting the experience and championship caliber of Garnett, Pierce, and Terry, what more do you really need? And also, just the star power and the amount of attention that those guys are going to be bringing to this team. Not that the Nets really need more attention. Personally, if I wasn't a Nets fan, I'd probably be pretty sick of all the publicity that they get for just existing, but that's a whole other story. But I think it's just a good fit. To an extent, it's a good fit. I think Kevin Garnett is a perfect fit with Brook Lopez. I feel like their games are going to mesh perfectly. Everything that Brook Lopez can't do, Kevin Garnett does. And so I feel like Garnett's really going to help Lopez, maybe help Lopez become the dominant center that we all hope he could be as Nets fans. And I think it's a great thing there. I like Jason Terry. as his sixth man role. I put it in quotes because Jason Terry hasn't really shown the sixth man characteristics last season, and he's kind of on the downside of his career, but he's still a capable player off the bench. But the one thing that kind of concerns me is Paul Pierce and Joe Johnson. How are these guys going to mesh? Let's be honest. Objectively, they're kind of the same player. They're both, big scorers, guys who use their size to score and be productive. They both post up. They both, create their own shot by shooting over players. They both can be spot-up shooters. They're both go-to guys at the end of games. They're both guys who can create, but also guys who really aren't as effective off the ball. And, it's going to be interesting to see how they mesh. Paul Pierce in Boston posted up a lot. He used his height to shoot over players. He shot a lot of jumpers. He shot a lot of threes. Not the most athletic guy around, and was a go-to scorer. And then Joe Johnson did a lot of post-ups. Johnson's game was basically posting up on smaller guards, and he would use his size and strength to get to the basket and try to finish with floaters and be a post-up shooter. If you really look carefully, they have very similar games. And they don't really complement each other that much because they're guys who usually need the ball in their hands. And when they don't need the ball in their hands, they do become spot-up shooters, but is that really utilizing them to their strength? So it's going to be interesting to see how their games mesh. Personally, I wish Gerald Wallace was still on the team. I know what you're saying. Just calm down. I know what you're saying. Gerald Wallace with his 7 points a game and games where he scores 0 points and it just looks like a complete disaster. Yes, I would rather have him in the starting lineup than Paul Pierce. Because in my opinion, a Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, Gerald Wallace, Kevin Garnett, Brook Lopez starting lineup is more of a complementary starting lineup than with Pierce in there. And the only reason why I say that is it just works better. Lopez will be the primary scorer. Darren Williams will be the second scorer. Joe Johnson's the third scorer and the go-to guy at the end of games. Garnett is the tough guy, energy guy who's going to bring toughness and be a fourth scorer when needed. And Jared Wallace is just simply the defensive lockdown guy who brings energy. I feel that works better. But now you've got Pierce, who's used to being the guy in Boston, kind of probably going to be clashing a little bit with Joe Johnson of who's getting those touches. Because we know Brook Lopez is going to get a fair amount of touches because the offense is focused around him. I know Darren Williams is going to get his touches because he's going to have the ball in his hands about 85-90% of the time. So it's really between Joe Johnson and Paul Pierce who is going to be the third scoring option. Who are the Nets going to give the ball to when Lopez is not in or when Darren Williams is out or whatever? Who's going to be that guy? Because it's not going to be both of them. There might be some nights where it could be Joe, some nights it could be Paul, but it's not going to be both of them on any given night. And because of that, you're going to see numbers really sliding, especially those two. First of all, everybody's numbers are going to go down. If you're in this fantasy world where you think that Lopez is going to score 20, Williams scored 20, 18 from Pierce, 18 from Johnson, and 16 from Garnett, you're just dumb. Because that's not going to happen. There's not enough touches for that to happen. And the Nets would have to shoot 70% for that to happen. Everybody's numbers are really going down. I don't think Lopez's will drop too much because he's the focal point of the offense. I think Darren Williams won't drop too much because he's had the ball so much. But between Paul Pierce and Joe Johnson, both those numbers are going down. And it really is going to be whoever is considered that third guy who's going to take the least amount of impact statistically. I think the guy who's not is going to take a huge statistical drop. And I think that's going to be Joe Johnson personally because Paul Pierce, he just has the personality of being that guy. Joe Johnson never really had that personality. I can see Joe Johnson kind of backing up behind Paul Pierce and letting Paul Pierce take over. And why is this a big deal? Well, I see Joe Johnson averaging maybe 12 points a game next season. And for a guy making close to $24 million, scoring only 12 points, here comes all the boos and all the hatred. But, it is what it is. It's not Joe Johnson's fault or the Nets' fault, really. Well, to an extent, but not Joe Johnson's fault that the Hawks thought he was the greatest player ever and gave him an unbelievably stupid contract for a player who's just good. But, it is what it is there. But that's what concerns me the most about that deal. I don't know how well Paul Pierce and Joe Johnson are going to mesh. I could be wrong, though. They could really complement each other, work out great, and everything works out, but neither of them are really lockdown defenders. Neither of them are bad defenders, but none of them are the type of defender that Gerald Wallace was, and none of them are nearly as athletic or really as quick or as defensive minded as Gerald Wallace. And that's my concern, is where's that defensive toughness going to come from that Gerald Wallace brought in? But, I mean, Pierce is definitely better than Gerald Wallace. No one's going to argue that. And we know that Garnett probably would not have waived his no-trade clause if Pierce wasn't coming to the Nets. So, that being said, whatever. You know, I'm still happy. I'm definitely not going to be upset about the deal. I'm definitely not really trying to, poo-poo Paul Pierce or anything. I'm actually happy he's there because I think he's got the championship pedigree that the Nets need, as well as Garnett and Terry. So I think things will be fine there. I'm just kind of saying that I actually think that this lineup could have meshed a little bit quicker and easier with Gerald Wallace. But, it is what it is. It's a good deal. I'm still happy. And so we'll just move on from there. Now we'll go into free agency. The Nets signed a couple players in free agency. The first thing they did, though, was they brought back Andrei Blatch. And that is huge because, especially with an aging Garnett, Blatch is going to need to play a lot of minutes for Lopez and Garnett, as well as Plumlee, but, we'll see what happens there. But really, it's a huge pickup. He played so solid for the Nets last season. I know he's a little bit of a head case, but he's a good kind of head case, So I think that was a good re-signing. Then they got Sean Livingston, whatever. No, I don't know. I don't have any feelings towards Sean Livingston. He's an okay backup point guard, which is what they need because they lost CJ miss a fast break open dunk and cost the Nets the playoffs. Watson. So I personally don't have any true feelings for Sean Livingston. If whatever he gives me, it's fine. I'm sure he can make an open dunk, so I'm okay with that. But the big one to me, the big signing was Andrei Kirilenko. This is a huge signing for the Nets. Kirilenko is the definition of a role player. He's a guy who doesn't need to start but can start if he needed to, who brings toughness, athleticism, defense, energy. He can shoot the three, though that's not really his game, but he can still shoot it when open. He can score if you want him to. But really, he'll just do all the little things that you need him to do. And, he's going to come off the bench for the Nets. And the thing is, he can play both the 4 and the 3. So he can be both a power forward and a small forward, which, once again, helps take some minutes away from Pierce and Garnett. So he's really going to be a significant player on this team. And I think he complements the Nets really well. And I guess, if you're going to lose Gerald Wallace, who's a great defender and athletic, why not bring in another good, who's probably better defender and athletic player in Andrei Kirilenko? And, and he has the greatest nickname in the NBA, AK-47. I mean, that is just, I like that. I like that a lot. I've always liked that nickname. It's so cool. The Russian rifle. Well, that's not his nickname. AK-47 is, but maybe the Russian rifle could start up. Just get something going there. Maybe if he makes a 3 or something, Ian Eagle could be like, oh, the Russian rifle, AK-47. I don't know. But that's getting off topic. But with Kirilenko and the signing of him came a little bit of controversy. A little bit. There's this conspiracy theory that the Nets are doing something under the table, or Prokhorov is doing some kind of deal with Kirilenko to make up the fact that Andrei Kirilenko signed for 1 year with a 1-year option, player option for $3 million a year. And he left $7 million on the table in Minnesota for the Timberwolves. People who say this are either haters or people who are just dumb and don't understand the business side of sports. There's a simple reason why this happened. Kirilenko opted out of his last year, or opted out of his deal with the Timberwolves for $10 million, thinking that he'd be able to get close to the same, if not more, money with a contending team or a better team where he has an opportunity to win. The guy is in his early 30s, but he's in the downside, starting the downside of his career, and he hasn't won anything yet. So it was really more of an idea thinking that he could opt out of his contract, get paid $8-10 million somewhere else, and be a significant part of a championship team. However, with Dwight Howard and all his stupidity and craziness and the Dwightmare and all that, just got sucked into a giant cluster of money and free agencies and started this crazy, chain reaction of signings and things. Andrei Kirilenko found himself really with no deal towards the end of free agency period, and he kind of realized he wasn't going to get the money he was expecting. So instead of, you know, waiting out, he just signed with the best option he's got, and that was the Nets for $3 million. And I think it's a good move, and I'm certainly excited that Kirilenko is there. And, you know, if you want to hate it, go ahead and hate it, but I think there's nothing to worry about. So Kirilenko's with the Nets, and I'm excited about it. I think this Nets team's going to be good. So, you know, that's that. That's basically all we've heard from the Nets so far in the offseason. They have one more roster spot because they have a team of 14. I'm not sure if they're going to get anybody right now, if they're looking, but we'll see what happens. Either way, the Nets seem pretty deep, and I'm excited about it. So thanks for listening to me talk about the Nets and their offseason. This is NetsBoy signing off.